you very much. My name is Chamandy. I'm here with my partner Ken Aber, and we are going to talk to you today about what we believe is the single most important question in business: why should I choose you? And we're going to talk about it from two standpoints. Can everybody in the back hear me okay? Yeah, good. Okay. We're going to talk about it from two standpoints. We're going to talk about it from a business standpoint, what this question means to business, what the implications are. Yeah, so what the implications are of this question on a business, if you're going to start your own business, or if you're going to be working in business, or hopefully running a business someday. But also we're going to be talking about what the importance of this question to you as individuals, if you're going to go out and get a job in the workplace after school. When we started this business and started talking about why should I choose you, it seemed like just a marketing and sales question, and for sure it is. But for any large company, they're asked this question thousands of times every day in thousands of different ways. And they can be as seemingly innocuous as, excuse me, but why should I return your email? Why should I return to your website? Why should I work for you? These are all why should I choose you questions that have nothing to do with marketing and sales and everything to do with every other area of your business. Excuse me. And what that made us realize is you could come up with a short, compelling answer to this question. It would actually shape every area of your business, not just marketing and sales. And so that's one powerful aspect of this question. And then the other one is that we believe that this should always be answered in 7 words or less. Now, when we say 7 words or less, everybody hears 7 words, and our clients will always say, "Oh, where are my 7 words?" Or "Oh, ours is only 2 or 3 words. Do we get a discount for that?" It's 7 words or less, and in fact, for most of our clients, it's 2, 3, or 4 words. So we call this your core proposition. The reason we call it your core proposition is that, products and services, they all have value propositions, and value propositions change over time. They change as market conditions change, they change as consumer attitudes change, but there is one proposition that is core to who you are. It's your DNA, and that never changes, and we call that your core proposition. Now, once we know what your core proposition or your 7 words or less is as a company, there are 2 very powerful things that you can do with that. You can use it to guide everything that you do. Am I blocking your view over here? Can you see the screen? You've seen it before. You can use it to guide everything that you do and everything that you say. And that's everything, right? You do stuff as a company, you say stuff as a company. And your core proposition will guide all of that. Everything that you do, how you develop products and services, how you serve your customers, how you structure the company, how you go out and get a financing, how you hire people, that's all the everything that you do, and we call that your business architecture. And then the everything that you say is branding, marketing, sales, investor relations, employee relations, board relations, and any other stakeholder relations that you have. So they are all going to be guided by your core proposition. And that everything that you say, just like we call everything you do your business architecture, what we do is we construct what we call your core story. And that becomes the top level narrative of the organization that guides everything that you say. Today what we're going to do is we're going to focus on one very small aspect of your core story, and that's a sales story. So it's a sales story of a company, and it's a sales story of an individual. And when you're out looking for a job, you're selling yourself. So that's what we're going to do and talk about in the second half of this presentation, is how you can construct a sales story around yourself so that you get the job that you want, at hopefully the salary that you want, and you're communicating your full value to the employer that you're hoping to work for. Now, as the fundamental component of your sales story that we want to communicate to you today, it's that what your customers are buying is fundamentally different from what you're selling. Okay? What they're buying is fundamentally different from what you're selling. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you examples of this in a minute. But when companies sell, what they typically do in a sales pitch is they go out and they say, here's what we do, buy from us. And all the here's what we do is what they're selling. And what we're saying is that there's something far more important than that, and you have to identify what it is that the customer is buying, because it's fundamentally different. And your core proposition, your 7 words or less, will reveal that. All right, so let's start out with a client of ours who is in retail shelving, right? So Home Depot builds a box. They go in and they put up all the rack shelving. And when they're done, then the store is ready to open. So we met with the CEO of this company. His name is John, and it's actually our book opens with this story. And we were having breakfast with him one morning, and he said, you know, I know there's a magic to my business. I know that we have a secret sauce. I know that there's something that makes us uniquely remarkable relative to our competitors. But every time we go in, every time I open my mouth to talk about the company, it all just sounds so generic and so banal, sort of like that corporate video. And it sounds like what all of my competitors can say. And we said, John, it's because you don't know what business you're in. And he said, you're right, I don't know what business I'm in. So he decided to do a blueprint. Now, where the conversation, and by the way, just as for context, the way we do a blueprint, it's 6 sessions of a half day each with up to 4 key decision makers in a company, one of whom has to be the CEO. So we've got John and his team in our office, and where the conversation got interesting in their blueprint is when they started talking about how they had been in business for 3 generations. Okay, not 3 decades, but 3 generations. Whereas most of their competitors were 5 or 10 years. And because of that longevity, they were able to get a store finished significantly faster than their competitors. So you can imagine if they get a Home Depot done a week or 2 faster than anyone else, the store opens a week or 2 sooner, and that's a week or 2 of retail sales that they wouldn't otherwise have. Now, for a Home Depot, this is north of $1 million a week. So we're talking about real money here. And that's the only metric that really matters to us at the end of the day is money. So as we're having this conversation about getting finished faster, one of John's executives says jokingly, you know on our signs where it says opening soon, I want ours to say opening sooner. And we just went, that's brilliant. That is really brilliant. And now we go through a process where we have to bulletproof the core proposition, because a core proposition can't just resonate with customers. It has to resonate with all stakeholders. So will an expression like this resonate with employees? Well, if you spent your whole career putting up rack shelving, it's not the most exciting job in the world. But when you now have a cause that you're committed to, and that cause being opening sooner, that cause gives you a sense of purpose, and it gives you bragging rights. And so it does resonate with employees. So we worked through all their material stakeholders and said, yep, it does resonate with this stakeholder in this way, and this stakeholder in this way, so it survived the bulletproofing process. Now, about a month after the blueprint was done, John was having lunch with the VP of construction at Home Depot. That's his direct client. And it was their year-end review. They were just talking about everything that went right, everything went wrong, and what was on the horizon for the future. So then John said, you know, I went through this interesting process where we redefined what business we're in. And the definition that we came up with is opening sooner. And the guy said, what do you mean? And he said, well, we can get you finished faster. And John said, how can you do that? Sorry, the client said, how can you do that? And John said, well, you know, when we do a store renovation for you now, according to the current specs, it takes 14 weeks. We've redefined those specs. And if you approve these specs, we'll get it done in 7 weeks, in half the time. And the guy ended up giving John $2.5 million in new business in that lunch without an RFP, just on the basis of that conversation. And in the space of a short conversation, although John had worked for this guy for years and years, and the guy knew how valuable John was and the value that his company delivered, yet John was still able to both broaden and deepen the client's understanding of what he did with just 2 words, opening sooner, which created the intrigue, which caused the guy to say, tell me more, I'm interested. And in the course of a short story, John was in a new position with his client and $2.5 million richer. So now the reason why, I just want to explain to you, if I can be so immodest, the magic of a core proposition. And that is that it has to resonate at a deep emotional level, as I said before. And here's how that works. If you're the VP of construction at a Home Depot, you have basically 2 things that you care about. One is staying on budget, and the other is staying on time. And staying on budget, you're accountable to the CEO and the CFO. But staying on time, you're accountable to the CEO, the CFO, the VP of operations, the VP of HR, the VP of marketing, the store manager, all the other internal people who are working on that opening, plus all of the external suppliers who have project management timelines feeding into that opening day. If you have to move that opening day back a week or 2, that goes click, 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 click back through everybody's project management timeline, and now you've got hundreds or even thousands of people ticked off at you. So it's arguable that staying on time causes the VP of construction more anxiety than staying on budget. And when you have the supplier who is most important to you meeting that opening day, saying to you, I'm not only going to beat your deadline, but I'm going to beat it by such a significant margin that you can open sooner and start generating revenue faster, you can just feel the sigh of relief coming from the VP of construction. This is one less thing I have to worry about. All right, so I just want to repeat again, what customers are buying is fundamentally different from what you're selling. And what we mean by that is, now that you've seen an example, is that what John is selling is all the same old stuff that he was selling before: a better trained workforce, a smarter workforce, better hiring practices, better project, all that crap. But what the customer is buying is opening sooner. So the opening sooner is far more important to that customer than how you do all that stuff. That's just detail to him or her. And the reason for that, the reason that what the customer is buying is more important than what you're selling, is because of how we listen. So as I mentioned to you before, when a company goes in and does a sales pitch, they're usually saying, it's just like blah, 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 great products, blah, 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 great people. Our people are our strength. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to shoot myself. And it's just all of these banalities. And the problem with that is that you cede control of your sales message to your customer when you sell that way. When you present a laundry list of all the things that you do and how you do them, you cede control, because if you're pitching to me, I'm sitting there going, okay, I get you do that, and you do that, and you do that, and you do that, but how does this work for me? How does this, where's the common thread there? How does this differentiate from other companies? So I'm now the one who's doing the interpretation of your sales story, and I could interpret it totally wrong. And the likelihood that I'm going to interpret it exactly as you want me to is very, very slim. So you've ceded control of the sales message to the customer when you talk about what you're selling. Now, when you talk about what you're buying, when you lead with opening sooner, as John does, you maintain control. And the reason for that is because when John said to the guy, you know, we're in the business of opening sooner, and he said, what do you mean? He didn't really mean, what do you mean? He said, tell me, like, you've hooked me, tell me more. And when you lead with what the customer is buying, and they have that intrigue, they wear that like a listening filter on their ears. And then everything that they hear after that goes through that listening filter. And that listening filter is a what's in it for me. Oh, I get opening sooner. That's what's in it for me. Now, how do you do that? And now John goes into the laundry list of all of the things he does. All of the things that I told you not to say before, you can do now. Because your customer is wearing the listening filter. So when you start talking about how you hire employees and how you train them, the client is sitting there, or the prospect is sitting there saying, oh, I get how that contributes to opening sooner. I get how that contributes to opening sooner. So all those things that were just, you know, random features and benefits floating out there before, now are proof points for opening sooner. And because I'm listening to through the filter of opening sooner, it actually elevates the power of all of those proof points, of all of those features and benefits. So if I talk about how I do training in isolation of your core proposition, it's like I'm just talking about training. But when the customer is listening through the filter of opening sooner, when you talk about training, that now has increased importance in the customer's mind, because they're listening for how does that contribute to opening sooner? Oh, I get it. That's a great training program. Okay, your credibility is rising and rising and rising with me. Now, another example was when John's on LinkedIn, and a mid-level construction manager at Best Buy in Vancouver connected with him on LinkedIn because he had a brief paragraph all about opening sooner. That woman was intrigued. She calls him up and she says, listen, can you come out here and talk to me about your business? And he said, sure, I'll hop on a plane next week. So John goes to Vancouver, and to his shock, he ends up in a boardroom with all the senior executives of Best Buy, which looked something like this cheesy stock photo we have up here. And he had no clue. He thought he was just meeting with this woman. It was meeting one of multiple meetings, but there they all were, the CEO and all of the VPs. And so he did his opening sooner pitch. And when he was done, they asked a few questions, and then with just sort of blank faces, they said, thank you very much, Mr. Panagas. We'll get in touch with you. And John knows that that's code for one of two things. Either, we're not interested, or we'll reconnect with you in 3 or 4 months when we actually get our act together. Now, later that night, John was in the departures terminal at Vancouver Airport, ready to take the red-eye back, and he got a call. And it was Best Buy. And they called him to say that he got the business. It was $850,000, and if he did that well, there was going to be a lot more business to come. You could have knocked him over with a feather. So I just want to reiterate, what customers are buying is fundamentally different from what you're selling. Now, a company that figured this out in 1986 is the ubiquitous brand Nike. And Nike used to, in all their advertising, I don't know if you know the story of Nike, but Phil Knight, who's still the CEO or the chairman of Nike, started selling them out of the trunk of his car back in the mid-60s. And he slowly built the brand to, the behemoth that it is today. And the way he used to advertise, once he got big enough to have an advertising budget, is the way everybody advertises. Here's our product, and here's all the great things about it, all the features and benefits. So you have a shoe in an ad, and it would point out all the stuff. Here's what's the sole, here's with the top, here's with the... And, but in 1986, that was the beginning of the Just Do It company, which was a campaign that Nike ran for about 20 years, and then they stopped, which they never should have done, and then they started again, but just all the energy has fizzled out of it. I'm not even sure if they're still doing it or what they're on to now, but this was just brilliant. But just get that just do it has nothing to do with features and benefits and everything to do with what Nike trained me through their advertising to understand that that's what I get from being a part of the Nike franchise, from being a part of the Nike brand. So if I really am a just do it kind of guy, then when Nike talks about just do it, I go, yeah, that's me. That's who I am. We're the same. We're kindred spirits. But even if I'm a fat slob lying on my couch on Sunday afternoon, watching the football game, swilling beers and eating chips, I can identify with this because I think I'm a just do it kind of guy, even though I'm not. So it was really a brilliant campaign, but this is what you're buying from Nike. Now, it's not to say that they don't talk about their products in their ads anymore. They do talk about it, but it's always within the context, or was always within the context of just do it. And what I'm buying, just do it, elevated all of the features and benefits that they would communicate in their ads. So again, what customers are buying is fundamentally different from what you're selling. I want to give you one more company example of that. So Eckler is a company that you probably haven't heard of. They're a mid-level actuarial firm. These are numbers nerds. And what they do is they work with companies, actuaries work with companies, usually insurance companies and those kinds of things, but they're numbers crunchers, and they're trying to help you understand your business better through the use of statistics. In particular, what Eckler does is they're specialists in defined benefit pensions. So if you've got a job with a company that has a pension, there's two kinds. There's defined benefit and there's defined contribution. The only thing you need to know for the sake of today, the difference between the two, if you're a company that offers a defined benefit pension, you need actuaries big time for that. And if you're a company that offers defined contribution benefits, you don't need actuaries. This whole company was built to serve companies that have defined benefit pensions. And everybody is switching from defined benefit to defined contribution. So when they came to us, they said, our future is disappearing. What do we do? And we said, figure out who you are at the DNA level, and that will answer your question for you. So they took a leap of faith. Actuaries are very risk averse, and this was a bit of an oddball process, but they took a leap of faith, and they said, fine. So, we're in the blueprint session, and they're talking. We said, okay, here's what it sounds like you're saying. First of all, your clients, the CEO and the CFO, have to make critical decisions now about what big chunks of money are going to do in the future. And they said, right. And we said, and through the mathematical models that you create, you help the CEO and the CFO make better decisions now about what big chunks of money are going to do in the future. They said, right. And you've given us three compelling reasons why your mathematical models are better than your competitors. And they said, right. And we said, so it sounds like you're in the business of predicting the future. And they just went, well, I thought the tops of their heads were going to blow off. And they said, well, nobody can predict the future. And we said, well, you can't predict the future with certainty, but you can predict the future with a greater degree of certainty. And if you can't do that, if that's not what you're helping your customers do, then you have no value to them. You have no value proposition. So it took them a while, but they eventually came around to it. All they could hear was certainty. They couldn't hear a greater degree of. And once they started hearing that, they started coming around to it. Now, you can, when you are in the business of being an actuary, if that's how you define your business, or if you define your business as being a specialist in defined benefit pensions, then your world is narrow and getting narrower by the day. But when you define yourself as being in the business of a greater degree of certainty, all you've got to do is go out into the marketplace and look for a CEO or a CFO who is experiencing uncertainty, and that becomes a prospect. And you can go out and pitch them on your business. And so what I'm sort of illustrating here with my hands about narrow and broad is that all businesses operate with blinders on. And those blinders could be narrow or they can be broad, right? Even like we do. But the thing is, wherever they are, there's opportunities for business that exist outside the blinders that you can't see because of how you define what business you're in. When you know your core proposition, your 7 words or less, it focuses you, but broadens the blinders. And all of a sudden, opportunities for business that were always there, but you never knew existed, come into view. And that's what I was saying about Eckler, right? So rather than just going after companies and trying to get their business for defined benefit pensions, what they did is they said, okay, look, the Eckler name is too closely associated with defined benefit pensions. So we're going to create a new co. And the new co is going to go after this new business. But we're going to go out and we're going to pitch 3 companies in the first year. And we're going to offer our services for free because we just want to learn this business. And we'll explain that to the companies that we're working for, and that's why we're offering our service for free. But one company was an online retailer who wanted to shift their business model from reactive to proactive. Another was a theater chain who wanted to correlate more effectively weather to staffing. And then the third was a big supermarket chain who was just drowning in data and didn't know what to do with it, didn't know how to figure out how to glean insights and golden nuggets from it that would help it move its business forward. But you can see that those 3 types of clients, none of which are anything like each other, are certainly nothing like what the singular kind of client that this business had been going after for the last 40 or 50 years. So all these opportunities to work for a theater chain, to work for a supermarket chain, to work for online had existed outside, had always existed there, but they couldn't see them because of how they defined their business. Redefine your business, and those opportunities will come into view. Once again, what your customers are buying is fundamentally different from what you're selling. Now, I want to take this out of the corporate realm and into the personal realm. What does this mean for you as an individual? Well, a CEO came to us. She had been working at a business for about 10 years, and it had not been a healthy business when she started, and it was a very robust, healthy business when she came to us, and it was sort of running itself. She had developed a really good senior team, and she found herself with nothing to do, which is the sign of a great CEO. But she said, I need a new challenge. But my problem is, and I actually found myself in this situation a little over 10 years ago, she was looking at switching careers. And because she had been entrenched in one business for so long and had been so successful at it, this is the paradox, is that she didn't know what else she could do. And she had been so long out of the marketplace and in other types of business that she actually lost confidence. She didn't know what she could do. She didn't know where she could go. She didn't want to go to another similar business because she'd been there, done that. Now, if this is where she is, very successful woman, coming off of a 10-year run, great run at a company, and this is how she's thinking, how is she feeling? How do you think she's feeling? Yeah? Discouraged? Yeah? Yeah?
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable? Good. What else? No thoughts? Yeah? Confused? Yeah? Retire? Oh, no, she didn't want retirement. No. No, but how's she feeling? How do you think you would be feeling in that situation where you're saying, I have to leave, but I don't know what I can do. I don't even know if there is anything I can do. Yeah?
Probably feel depressed.
Depressed, yeah.
Scared.
Scared, yep. And she's feeling all those things that you said, right? She's feeling anxiety. And she shouldn't be. So we had a conversation with her, and we had to get to the core of who she was. And so we started talking to her, you know, what are you looking for in a business? What do you like to do? What do you feel your strengths are? What do you feel your weaknesses are? We just started peppering her with questions. And where all those answers led to was one place, and that's basically that she doesn't just like a challenge. Lots of people like a challenge. What she likes is an extreme challenge. She likes to walk into a pigsty and clean it up. And so the image that occurred to us, aside from just sort of this blankness, was that she was all about navigating safely through the minefield. And when you know who you are this way, what she wanted was she wanted to go into a company that was doing terribly, where the executive team was feeling anxiety, where the employees were worried that they were going to lose their jobs. And she wanted to say, don't worry, it's going to be okay. We're going to come out of this. Now let's get to work. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this and this and this and this. And this is the beginning of pulling ourselves out of the muck. And that's what she loves to do. She loves to lead a team of people safely through the minefield, and you get to the other side, and you're free and clear. So Ken and I both have our own 7 words or less, and Ken's is causing wow. And the interesting thing about this is a two-edged sword for Ken, because he's excited about the idea that, like, when Ken's sitting in a meeting, he's normally, as you may have noticed, a lot quieter than I am. But he's really just sort of listening, reading the room. And he's trying to make connections between various parts of the conversation. And he'll make a connection and he'll say, you know what, this. And everyone goes, wow, where the hell did that come from? That's really cool. And that's, you know, that's what he does. That's his shtick. Now, the other side of the sword for him is that becomes an expectation, right? If people know that Ken is about causing wow, then Ken has to deliver wow. And fortunately, it is in his DNA, both literally and figuratively, that he can do that. But he's got to be on the ball. He's got to be on his game every time he's in a business meeting, and he's got to deliver wow. And mine is the relentless pursuit of simplicity. And where that came from is actually when I was in university, I took this really difficult philosophy course. It was only a second-year course, but it was a really, really difficult book, hard to wrap your mind around. And I had to do an essay on a chapter and then teach that to the rest of the class. That's just the way the class was structured. And you got to get, this is back in 1981. Pardon me? 1921. No, 1981. And it was at the very sort of dawn of the age, the real sort of birth of genetic understanding. I realize that Watson and Crick were well before that, but where genetic knowledge really started to gain momentum was in the early 80s. And so it was my role to give a primer on DNA, on how it worked and what all the parts were and that sort of thing. And fortunately, I had a roommate who was a genetic biologist. So I was able to have conversations with him about really complex things, about 80% of which I didn't understand. But I'd just keep asking questions. And I would get him out of the world of technicality and into the world of just simple logic. And I wrote this paper, and it was DNA for Dummies. And it was understandable. And what I got from that is that I can actually understand anything. And any of you can as well. You just have to keep at it. And if you don't understand it, it's not because you're not smart enough, it's because it's not being explained to you properly. But the onus on you, if you want to get it, is to keep asking the questions and asking the questions and asking the questions until it crystallizes and it's simple and clear. So I just want to reiterate our main point in here, just in case the 4 or 5 other times that I said it, you didn't hear it. It's that what customers are buying is fundamentally different from what you're selling. The reason actually that I should mention that we wanted to talk about your individual core proposition is because Ken and I have looked at hundreds or even thousands of resumes over the years. And there's always that place at the top, you know, you've got your name and your address, you've got all your contact information. And then everybody puts a variation on the same line. I'm looking for a company where I can utilize my skills and that, you know, it's like blah, 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 blah. It's like a mini version of that generic corporate video we showed at the beginning. And you go through a stack of resumes and it's just, oh, same thing. Same thing, same thing. And then all of a sudden, somebody says something different. We had this woman come in and apply to be our assistant. And she walked in and she said, I know what my 7 words or less are. And every time somebody says that, I cringe because they're going to come out with something. And it's going to be, I do this. And a core proposition never starts with I do or we do. And now I'm going to be in the uncomfortable position where I've got to explain to them why that's not their core proposition. But because figuring out your core proposition is such a difficult thing to do, I can't just tell you what it is, just like that. She said, it's putting the pink in everything. Now she walked in and she was very tastefully but stylishly dressed. And she was tastefully but stylishly made up. And so we had a conversation. She was with us for about an hour. And she was not a good fit for us. And it was very clear to us why. Not that she was not a talented person or a great personality or someone that we wouldn't love to have around the office. She just wasn't a right fit for the job. And she wasn't because she knew what her core proposition was. And we knew what it was, and we knew that that was not the right fit. So we called her up and made, you know, what is always one of the most difficult phone calls in business, which is to tell somebody why you're not hiring them. And we phoned her up and we said, you know, we loved our conversation with you, but, you know, you're just not a good fit. And she said, I know. And we said, well, how did you know? And she said, well, I'm about putting the pink in everything, and you guys aren't. And it was like, this is a great conversation because there's no hard feelings on her side. There's now no uncomfortableness on our side. And we're just having, oh, that's me. We're just having a conversation about what's real here without any emotion. It was just obvious to everybody that it wasn't the right fit, which was a great thing. And then she went on and she got a job with Holt Renfrew, who is looking for people who put the pink in everything. And I think is she still working there to that day? 10 years later, holy cow. Right? So that was obviously a very right fit for her and a very right fit for Holt Renfrew. All right, so that's the end of our monologue. And we're going to move on to an exercise with you. But first of all, we want to open it up to questions about anything that we've said in here. And it could be about the business side of what we presented to you, or it could be about the personal side. So what's the difference between a core proposition and a tagline or a slogan? Well, sometimes there is no difference. I would say probably in about a third of our clients, the core proposition has a nice ring in the, you know, on the consumer side, so they use it as a tagline as well. But the other 2/3 it doesn't. And so the fundamental difference between a slogan and a core proposition is that a slogan will change over time, right? As market conditions change, as consumer attitudes change, as you reposition a product, but your core proposition will never change. So for instance, the retail shelving company used opening sooner as their tagline. But there may come a time where, because of the way the marketplace changes, As a communications device, it's no longer appropriate or no longer powerful. But as the beating heart of the company that drives all their strategic decision making, that'll never change. Because 20 years from now, as long as there's still bricks and mortar, there's going to be a VP of construction who has two things that he or she cares about: staying on time, staying on budget. And as long as he's still the leader in opening sooner, then he'll have a value proposition that is resonant with that customer. Now, ours is from confusion to clarity. We can't use ours as a tagline, and if you look at our logo, you can see that it's a visual representation of from confusion to clarity. The reason that we can't is because the CEO is always our client. So we're going in and pitching a CEO. And if we walked in and said, "We're here to take you from confusion to clarity," the next thing we would hear is, "I'm not paid to be confused. You guys are jerks. Get out of here. Meeting's over." Right? It's sort of arrogant. Now, the thing is, it is actually what we do. If you go onto our website, we've got a bunch of video testimonials from our customers there. But the one that we like the most is, are you familiar with Famous People Players? It's the organization of developmentally delayed people, and they put on blacklight shows. It's really amazing. If you go, it's a dinner theater. It's an amazing show. You really should check it out. And if you do, you'd be helping a lot of people. But Diane Dupuis, who's the founder and CEO of the organization, you'll see in the video, she says, "Yeah, you know, Famous People Players is like a marionette." And I thought after all these years that the marionette's lines were so tangled that I was going to have to throw it out and get a new marionette. But the Blueprint boys came in and they just carefully untangled the lines on the marionette. And I realized that my original marionette was still beautiful. And that's really what we do, and that's going from confusion to clarity. So we don't talk about from confusion to clarity. We talk about, why should I choose you in 7 words or less, which is really saying the same thing, but in a different way. And people, when we walk in, they say, "Okay, I'll tell you about my business, but I can't do it in 7 words or less." It becomes a fun thing. It's playful. At the end of the meeting, once we've built a rapport with that CEO, he or she will invariably ask us, "So what's your 7 words or less?" And we'll say, "From confusion to clarity." And they'll say, "Yeah, that's where I am. That's what I need that clarity." But we can only say it at the end because we've built up the rapport and the beginnings of a relationship that gives us the permission to do that. Is our core proposition who we are or who we want to be? And the answer is yes. It's actually both. So it's got 1 foot in the past, and 1 foot in the past and present, and 1 foot in the future. So when you look at a core proposition like opening sooner, the next thing that we do in the process is we start looking at all the parts of the business, and we hold opening sooner up to a part of that business, and we say, is this part really aligned with and committed to getting companies finished, getting the store finished faster? And if it is, that's great. We don't touch it. But if it's not, we say, okay, how does this part of the business need to be shifted in order to be fully aligned with opening sooner? And that's the aspirational part. So the part of your business that's already living up to your core proposition is what you're doing now and what you've done in the past. And the part that's not is the aspirational part. So it's both current and aspirational. And it's the same for you. Because your DNA has not changed since the day you were born. You are who you are. I was actually, what was I looking at? I was looking at, I don't know if they were family photos. It wasn't family photos, but it was photos from like a long time ago, maybe school. And when I was 8 or 9 years old, and it was like, holy cow, you know what? Like, we still all look essentially the same, even though I've got gray hair and a lot less of it now. And you know what? Like I pretty well thought the same way back then that I did now. It's just a little bit more refined. So we don't really change. So you just gotta capture who you are. And that'll be the same for now and in the future.